So I'm here talking with Mattson Tomlin, writer, director of Mother Android, which just premiered on Hulu today. Well, this is not going to be airing today, so yesterday on the December 17th. And I just finished it this morning. This is your directorial debut. I'm 33. You're 31 years old. And we just have completely different lives. I'm collecting VHS tapes and working at a community college, and you are directing movies with A-list stars. This is phenomenal. So how was the pressure of directing your first feature film?
How was the pressure? The pressure is always on. You want to put your heart into something. You want to make it good, something that you really believe in. We shot this movie during COVID. We shot it, September of 2020 is when we started shooting. So pre-vaccine. It was a very stressful petri dish of, what are we doing and how are we doing it, that really forced me to be extra prepared and focused on what I was trying to do. And I don't know. The pressure was there.
Yeah, I noticed one scene in particular, one of the doctors or nurses was wearing a mask, and I was thinking, is this because they're in a hospital, or is this because it was filmed during the COVID era? So that must have been extremely, even more stressful for you, directorial debut during a global pandemic. But I think for a feature film debut, you knocked it out of the park. Now, this did premiere on Hulu, and it seems like that's sort of the future of movies, is that it's going to be streaming. I know feature films in theaters are always going to exist, but it seems like it's sort of going the way of streaming. Do you think there'll always be a place for going to the movies? Do you expect a lot of companies, production companies, to sort of just make films directly for, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Amazon? Do you expect, feature films in the movies to remain a thing?
I think theaters are always going to exist because they're fun, and seeing something on the big screen on for some kind of films, you can't beat it. I think there's going to be fewer movies that come out in theaters, and at the same time, streaming does just open up the opportunity for lots of different kinds of films to get made. And I think that if you wind the clock back 10 years ago, there were a lot less exciting movies, and just a lot more of, we were getting blockbusters, $100 million movies, and then $1 million movies, and kind of nothing in between. And now with the Netflixes and the Hulus and the Amazons, with all those guys, now there's kind of an evening of the playing field again, where they'll take the risk on movies that are $10 million, $25 million, $35 million, those numbers that you go and you look at movies in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and a lot of your favorite movies are going to be those numbers. And then we get to the mid 2000s and we weren't making them anymore. So that for me is kind of the exciting thing about it. And then in my case, it's always nice to, when you're not doing a superhero movie, when you're not doing, Spider-Man comes out today and everybody's going to go run and see it.
Yeah, I saw it last night.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you saw it last night and you watched my movie this morning.
Yes.
And you know what? That's correct, because Spider-Man is something you've known about for your entire life, and Mother Android you've known about for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so I think that's totally right. And for me, it's it's my first movie. I just want people to see it. If they see it today or they see it, 8 months from now, either one is totally fine. I'm just happy it can exist.
Yeah, it is interesting that you say that it is difficult to get a small budget movie in theaters and especially to get the promotion behind it. I feel like unless it's an Oscar quality type of movie, the only movies you see in theaters these days are going to be those $100 million films. It is rare for a $5-10 million movie to get the backing of the studio behind it. And it is great that there is outlets out there like a Hulu or a Netflix to sort of give those directors and writers the opportunity to put their projects out there. But I thoroughly enjoyed your movie, Mother Android, and it's definitely got a unique spin on something somewhat familiar, but obviously it has a personal story behind it, because I was reading about your personal life, and this is obviously something that is near and dear for you. Growing up, I was reading that you didn't know your birth parents, and clearly that is. I mean, spoiler alert. We're not going to get too much into it, but pregnancy and being in the middle of a horrible situation at the parents' home. It seemed like that was something that you want to put on the big screen, but obviously with the twist of there being an android sort of apocalypse surrounding it. And this is really not an action movie. There are a few action scenes, but I'd say the heart of it really is just the parents having to make tough decisions with their young children. So I mean, how personal was this story for you?
Yeah, completely. For me, I was born right after the Romanian Revolution, and I don't know my birth parents, and I wanted to take the 5 or 6 things that I do know about them to be true, and translate that into an emotional human story. And I kind of had two options in front of me when I was writing. One was, okay, do it straight, do it, set in 1989 in Bucharest, and have it be with Romanian actors. And that sounds like a movie I would love to make someday. I don't think anybody's going to let me make it for my first film. That's a big swing. And so then the answer becomes, okay, can you make it more tailored for American audiences? Can you make it more tailored for popcorn and fun? And so that's where genre comes in. And we've seen lots of filmmakers take personal stories and use genre to really be able to say something. Kind of the critical darling of this example is Jordan Peele with Get Out, where he's talking about some real things in that movie in a pretty spectacular way, but it's through horror. And
yeah,
that's the power of genre. And so that's kind of what led to this tricky mishmash of robot apocalypse plus, family drama.
Yeah, even someone like Steven Spielberg with the movie E.T., I mean, he grew up with a single parent family, and obviously the main story of E.T. is about an alien and a child, but it's also about growing up with only a mother. So yeah, I guess you have to blend different genres to sort of capture, like you said, American audiences. What sort of movies influenced you, though, while making this? I mean, the main influence, and I was reading you're attached to a Terminator series, an anime series that's going to be on Netflix. So obviously the connection, when you think of an android takeover apocalypse, you go immediately to the Terminator series, which I personally have a love-hate relationship with it. I think, like most people, we tend to like the first two movies. The third one has a couple of cool scenes. Fourth one, fifth one, oh god. And the last one that came out, I personally did not care for at all. So, I mean, did the Terminator series really influence Mother Android?
In some ways, I feel like I have to say, how could it not?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a pillar cornerstone of our pop culture. And on the other hand, it was kind of the thing of, well, I'm not doing Terminator here, so I have to go in this other direction. And so there were some creative choices that were like very just simple. It sounds stupid to talk about, but okay, the Terminator has red eyes. Like, I'm not going to do red eyes because then it's just like, it feels too similar to an image that is so iconic. So there are cosmetic choices to be made, but then also in the fabric of the story, the Terminator story is kind of about the chosen one and trying to stop the end of the world. And this is not that story. These are just people.
Yeah.
And this is a much more human, we're just people trying to survive, and kind of a much more day in the life. And it's a much more zoomed in world. And so on some level, you always know it's there, and that people are going to compare, what you're doing to Terminator. And on the other hand, you go, but their aims are so different that I've kind of just got to let that go and do my own thing. But Terminator, it's in my, I am working on this anime series for Netflix. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait for it to come out. We're just in the early stages of animating now. Very, very, very exciting. To go back to the original question of like, what were the movies in my mind? Certainly Terminator, but also, Children of Men was a big one. And that felt like, okay, we don't often see pregnancy in the heart of kind of high tension thrillers. And, that's for me kind of the all-timer. And then, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is another big one for me. This is just a story about a family, two sets of families that are on opposite sides of this war. And we deeply fall in love with both of those families as they are trying to figure out how to survive on their own terms.
And that film, of course, directed by Matt Reeves, who's the producer of this movie, Mother Android. And I do want to get to Matt Reeves in a second, but back to that Terminator series. Is there a release date? You said it's in the early stages of animation, so I'm assuming it's not going to be out in 2022, maybe 2023, perhaps?
I think we're talking about 2023. I mean, we're hand drawing all of this.
Yeah.
So I say we as if I'm doing any of it. The geniuses in Japan are hand drawing all of this. It's going old school. It's production IG, and they did, Ghost in the Shell. So it's a real big swing and a real big undertaking, both in terms of the writing and the story that we're telling, but also in terms of just the production. So it's gonna be a beat, but I'm very excited about what we're cooking up.
I am as well. I mean, obviously, you're not going to want to give away anything about this. Well, I'll ask it. I'll ask it. Is this going to take place in the future? Because I always love the future scenes especially the first two Terminators, and they're only there for 5-10 minutes. And then when we finally got a full movie that takes place in the future, Salvation, it just wasn't what it looked like in those first two movies.
Right.
And I always wish we got a full movie. And I think everybody wanted Terminator 3 to be that film when it originally came out, to be the future film with a grown-up John Connor kicking ass. Is there a time frame where this is going to be set?
Here's what I'll say, because I am realizing, I'm not allowed to say anything.
Yeah, no one's listening. Also, so
here's what I'll say that could make people happy and is actually a tangible piece of something. Without commenting on which movies in this franchise I'm now working in, I like or dislike and think work or think doesn't work. I am very aware of the criticisms of the franchise, and with many of those criticisms, completely agree and go, yeah, guys, I'm on the same page. And so hearing that and kind of knowing what has been done and what's worked and what's not, and then going in very full-hearted of wanting to deliver the thing that I've been wanting for that franchise for my whole life. And then on top of that, just reminding people, you have time travel and you have assassin robots that look like people. And I think that those two things have not been exploited to the greatest level. Like, I don't think that those two things are taken to the limits in the Terminator franchise. And I'm going to try.
Well, I cannot wait. I'm a huge animation buff and obviously have a fondness for those earlier Terminator movies, so I will be watching as soon as it comes on. I can't wait to see, artwork and teasers and all of that is going to be coming. I'm super excited for that. Now, we talked briefly for just a second. You mentioned Spider-Man. I sort of have a fatigue with these superhero movies, and it's hypocritical of me to say that because I go see them all, but it does not seem like, because we're relatively the same age, and when we were growing up, it was every 2, 3, maybe 4 years you would get a superhero movie. Now you don't go a year without 4, 5, or 6 of them, and it's sort of like if you eat ice cream every single week, it takes away the specialty of having ice cream. Do you find that the big blockbuster films that do come out, the superhero movies in particular, because a lot of old school directors, I feel like have had it up to here with them. You know, Ridley Scott and Scorsese was talking crap about it. Are you sitting in their boat, or do you still have fun?
You're trying to get me in trouble. You're trying to get Twitter after me. No, look, I would say that I love a lot of those movies, but they have to have heart. They have to really feel like, I think that there's a tricky balance in when is it just kind of corporate synergy going, we just need more superhero movies to come out because we need money, versus there's a creative team behind the curtain who really deeply cares about the story they're telling and the character that they have, and they really get it. And I think that, look, nobody ever sets out to make a bad movie. But I think that when the market is driving for commercial reasons, this is the thing that we're going to make, it gets a little bit dicier because, not everybody grew up with comic books. Not everybody grew up loving superhero movies, and different generations have very different relationships to this material. I did grow up on comic books. I did grow up loving superhero movies, and I still do. And do they still feel special? Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of the time they do. I'm very excited for this Spider-Man movie that's coming out right now. I'm very excited for Sam Raimi to come back into the Marvel. Like because I'm just like, what's that gonna be, guys? I don't know, but that's a filmmaker who hasn't made a movie since I think 2013.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time, and so sign me up. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm kind of all for it, so long as we still make movies that are not superhero movies. And that, I think, is the thing that is a little bit more, make as many superhero movies as you want. I love them. I'll show up for them. Give me my dramas. Give me my period pieces. Give me my romantic comedies too.
Now, the thing I love about Mother Android is it has an ending to it, and that's one of the main issues I do have with the superhero movies is that they're making them, and then the reason I feel like they're making them is to make more of them, and it's a never-ending thing with them. And I like the finality of sorts with your movie, and it was a breath of fresh air. Especially, obviously, I saw the Spider-Man movie the night before, and there's no spoiler here, but there's post-credit scenes, and they're setting up 15 other movies with this, and it seems like you said, there's an agenda behind some of these. Not that series in particular, but a lot of them are just, they're making a movie to make money. But back on the superhero thing, we were talking about Matt Reeves, and he's going to be directing the Batman, which I know you were a part of that film, right? The screenwriter for it?
I am an uncredited screenwriter on that movie. I had a great time having a 6-7 months of working very closely with Matt. It was a great experience, and off of that experience, I called DC and asked if they'd let me do a comic book. So I went and I wrote my own Batman comic book, which the third issue came out this past Tuesday.
And that's Batman the Imposter, right?
Yeah, that's Batman the Imposter. Yeah. That was a mind-blowing experience because comic books is where the love started for me. So to be able to now come into the comic book world and say what I wanted to say about that character feels really good. But no, I mean, Matt is a mentor to me. He's a really good friend, and also just he is a master filmmaker. And so just being able to be in a room with him and learn from him over the years has been tremendous. Yeah,
as soon as I saw his name attached to this Batman movie, I was so excited. I'm such a big fan of his stuff. Cloverfield was great, but those Apes movies, I think they're the most underappreciated films of the last 20 years. They don't get the love that they deserve. They're absolutely brilliant. I think they get better. The first one's great, but by the end of the third one, it's a masterpiece, and it doesn't get talked about as much as these superhero movies do. But I'll rather watch any of those Planet of the Apes movies over half of Marvel stuff any day. So, I mean, you got to write a comic book. That must be a dream come true. And again, we're relatively the same age. I don't know if you grew up with Batman the Animated Series, but that was something.
That's the entry point for me.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, in their early 30s, that's where they were introduced to comics, was through whether it's the X-Men cartoon show or the Batman cartoon show or Spider-Man. So getting to write for, I'd say, the most iconic superhero, I think he overtook Superman at this point. It's got to be mind-blowing to be in charge of creating the stories, whether it's in the comic form or helping write this feature film, which is going to be a huge success.
It's a character. He's been around for 82 years, and there's been a lot of good Batman stories, bad Batman stories. There's been a lot of great all-timer, some of the most talented and brilliant artists and writers in the world have worked on that character. And then it comes down to this moment of, and then there's you.
Yeah.
And you have your shot and you kind of go, okay, what do I have to say here? And can I say anything different? While also knowing that to change it too much, to start to mess with the form too much, it will very quickly not feel like Batman and will very quickly start to feel like the Punisher, or very quickly start to feel like some other thing. So you kind of have to keep it in the lane that it's in, and it's a pretty narrow lane, while at the same time pushing the boundaries and getting people out of their comfort zones. And that for me was very scary, but also very fun working on this comic book of going, I feel like Alfred is the character that has become a narrative crutch. He's kind of like Harry Potter's Dumbledore. He can show up and make things okay, and he's a plot device on some level that I think has been used in a certain kind of way. And I, with my book, felt, let's get that guy out of there. Like, let's completely retextualize what that relationship would be, which is, okay, he's a butler. He's hired by the Waynes, and suddenly he finds out he has custody and he doesn't want it. And there's a fracturing in that relationship. And Alfred is not part of Bruce Wayne's relationship in Batman the Imposter. And there were a lot of people that didn't like that choice. And then a lot of people who went, haven't seen that before. Okay, like, I'm out of my comfort zone a little bit. It still feels like Batman, but you are doing something degrees different. And that's going to make me lean in, because otherwise I'd go read the comic books that are already great and that I already know and love because they've done it better. And so it's a tricky balance of do something new while also play the old favorites. Yeah,
like you said, you have an 82-year history of this character. You can't just regurgitate the same stories over and over again. So it's great to have a fresh face put his own spin on The Dark Knight. And Mattson, this has been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see what's next from you, man. I mean, besides the Terminator series, you got Batman next year. Is there any other live action projects that you're working on?
There's a bunch of stuff. I think that the only thing that's been kind of low-key announced, he brought it up in the press at one point and they took off with it, but Keanu Reeves co-wrote and created a comic book series that Boom is publishing called BRZRKR. And I am now working with him to write the movie version.
What?
Of that. So we're deep in that right now. Me and the man. And that has been a dream come true, and sometimes very difficult to process. But no, it's going to be a soulful, big, fun, loud action movie of Keanu, half man, half god. He's been around for 80,000 years and wants to know, why am I here?
That just sounds like everybody my age's dream job to have. I'm just imagining you get to text Keanu Reeves and make a spectacular action film with him. He has had such a resurgence in his career with the John Wick series and then The Matrix coming out this year. He is just you never hear a bad word said about the guy, and I'm sure getting to know him personally. Has that been an issue with you? Because I'm sure you've met some people that you've idolized and looked up to, and then when you meet them in real life, maybe they don't live up to those expectations. Has Keanu lived up to all of that? All the memes that they talk about with Keanu. Is he everything we dream about?
I mean, he's a wonderful guy, and he's been my personal hero since the dawn of my existence, and so. You want these people to live up to that. And in this case, he's only been great to me. But because there's a real person there. And, at the end of the day, we get together, we do our work. And I feel really lucky to be able to be in the same room as him and work with him on this thing that is very important to him. It's his book, it's his story, and I'm here to help him translate it to the screen. Definitely those first couple of meetings, my heart is pounding in my chest. Like I'm nervous as hell to go in. And then at a certain point, it's just two guys talking about comic books and talking about story and getting excited about the same things. And you kind of forget you're talking to Jack Traven and Neo and John Wick all at the same time. For a second, you can forget it. And then it'll hit you in the face again.
That is amazing to hear. And I think, I get nervous even talking to you, and I think we're gonna have a long relationship because you're gonna be extremely successful in this field that you're in, and you're gonna remember the little guy at Nassau Community College. So hopefully, when you make these bigger budget films, you could come by and talk about them. But definitely recommend everybody to watch Mother Android on Hulu. I absolutely loved it. I could have just lied and been like, yeah, I watched it. But no, I enjoyed the entirety of it. But I think it was the last 10 minutes of the movie that really hit me. I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a little bit of a twist towards the end, and then the last 10 minutes is just an emotional roller coaster. I loved it. It was unlike anything, and yet familiar. It takes different genres that I'm used to, but putting its own unique spin on it. So it's a definite recommendation from me. And Mattson, you did a great job. I really appreciate the time that you took out to speak to me about all your upcoming projects.
No, appreciate it. And yeah, totally. Like, I will remember Justin Greenberg. Yeah. I'll come back. Let's go do it.
Excellent. All right, dude. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good one, dude.